April 24th, 1967. High above the Earth, a tragedy is unfolding that will haunt the history of space exploration forever. A fireball is tearing through the atmosphere, falling faster than a speeding bullet. Inside that burning metal capsule is not just an astronaut. It is a man who knows, with absolute certainty, that he is about to die. American intelligence officers stationed at listening posts in Turkey adjust their headsets. They expect to hear coded scientific data. Instead, the reports say they hear something that chills them to the bone. They hear a man crying. They hear a man cursing the very people who put him inside a botched spaceship. His name was Vladimir Komarov, and his death was not an accident. It was a sacrifice. This is the untold story of the man who fell from space. To understand why Komarov was in that capsule, we must travel back to the height of the Cold War. 1967 was not just any year for the Soviet Union. It was the 50th anniversary of the Communist Revolution. The Kremlin needed a victory. They needed a spectacle to show the world, and especially the United States, that they were the masters of the cosmos. Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev demanded a mission that had never been attempted before. The plan was audacious. They would launch one spaceship, the Soyuz 1, with Komarov inside. The next day, a second ship would launch. The two would meet in the dark void of space, dock together, and the cosmonauts would switch ships before coming home. It sounded like science fiction. But in reality, it was a death sentence. The ship, the Soyuz 1, was a technological disaster. As the launch date approached, engineers began inspecting the vehicle. What they found was terrifying. They discovered not 10, not 50, but 203 structural defects. 203 separate problems, any one of which could be fatal. The engineers were paralyzed with fear. They knew sending a man up in this tin can was murder. They wrote a detailed, 10-page memo listing every single fault. They tried to push it up the chain of command to warn the leadership. But this was the Soviet Union, where bad news was often met with punishment. Nobody dared to show the memo to Brezhnev. To deliver that report was to risk being fired, arrested by the KGB, or sent to a gulag in Siberia. So, the memo was ignored. The launch date was set. This is where the story turns from a political thriller into a heartbreaking tragedy of friendship. The pilot assigned to this suicide mission was Vladimir Komarov. His backup pilot was none other than the national hero, the first man in space, Yuri Gagarin. The two men were best friends. They hunted together, they drank together, their families were close. Komarov knew the ship was broken. He knew he wouldn't come back. Friends urged him to refuse the mission. But Komarov gave an answer that reveals the depth of his character. He said, "If I don't go, they'll send Yura." He knew that if he stepped down, the strict Soviet protocol meant Gagarin would be forced to take his place. Komarov could not live with the idea of killing his best friend. He chose to die so that the hero of the Soviet Union could live. As the launch day arrived, the atmosphere was heavy with dread. Gagarin, desperate to save his friend, acted like a man possessed. He yelled at superior officers. Rumors say he even showed up at the launch pad, demanding to be put in a spacesuit, trying to force his way onto the ship to take Komarov's place. But he was held back. Komarov walked to the rocket. Witnesses say he didn't look heroic. He didn't wave with pride. He looked resigned. He was singing quietly to himself as they strapped him in. As soon as the Soyuz reached orbit, the nightmare began. One of the solar panels failed to deploy. This meant the ship was starved of power. The navigation systems failed. The thermal control system malfunctioned. The ship began to spin wildly. Komarov was trapped in a metal coffin, tumbling through the void, blind and powerless. On the ground, the Soviet commanders realized their mistake. They canceled the launch of the second ship. But for Komarov, it was too late. For hours, he fought the controls. The capsule was spinning so fast that he could barely read the instruments. Then came the most heartbreaking moment of all. Realizing there was no hope, the ground control connected Komarov to a phone line with his wife, Valentina. High above the world, knowing he was a dead man walking, he said goodbye to the woman he loved. He told her to take care of their children. He told her to start a new life. On the other end, Soviet Premier Alexei Kosygin was reportedly crying as he told Komarov that he was a hero. Against all odds, using nothing but his pilot instincts and looking out the window to align the ship with the moon, Komarov managed to stabilize the capsule manually. He did the impossible. He lined up for re-entry. He survived the intense heat of the atmosphere. He was almost home. He deployed the main parachute. It didn't open. He pulled the reserve chute. But because the ship was spinning, the lines got tangled. The parachute collapsed. There was nothing left to do. The capsule plummeted to Earth at 140 kilometers per hour. When the recovery team arrived in the Russian steppe, they found a crater. The capsule had flattened on impact. The retro rockets, designed to slow the landing, had exploded on the ground, melting the metal remains. But Komarov had one final, chilling request before he launched. He had asked for an open-casket funeral. He wanted the generals, the politicians, and the leaders to look at his charred, unrecognizable remains. He wanted them to see exactly what their ambition had cost. Vladimir Komarov didn't just fall from space. He was pushed by politics and caught by his own bravery.